So good morning, everyone. Let's get started. My name is John McKenzie. I'm from SCION Instruments. I am the software manager. I look after Compass and MS Workstation and various plugins that are associated with the Compass platform. Today we're going to talk about Sample Streamer, which is an automation tool that we have. It's very useful for getting higher efficiency and higher throughput in your laboratory. And my PC seems to be going very slowly and not actually moving forward in my presentation. So today what we will do is I have a short presentation just now, and then we have a small demonstration at the end where we will run the software and we can talk about some of the features. So Sample Streamer is a direct replacement for Varying Galaxy's scheduler software. So if you've seen that before or had any experience of that before, that software was left behind at Agilent, and we completely redeveloped it from scratch, completely new software using an SQL database instead of the older database that was used in Scheduler. As I mentioned, it's mostly an automation tool. It's designed to streamline throughput in the laboratory so that you can get an overview of all of the samples that are running, to be run, have completed on one single screen. So you can have multiple sequences running on multiple instruments, and all of that will be available for review, for reordering, for reshuffling, for better throughput on your overall laboratory. It is that kind of scale Sample Streamer. Sample Streamer wants to work across the whole laboratory. It's not interested in one single instrument, but you can use it in that way if you choose, but it really starts to pay dividends when you have lots of instruments and all of them are running different sequences, different types of samples all the time. So in the normal setup, Compass has various associated. All of these are communicating with Compass, and you can see the status of each of the systems at any given time. So if you go to that particular terminal, you can see what's running on the instruments associated with that terminal. In this case, maybe the LC and the GC connected to one terminal. You can see everything that is running on different tabs for those systems. What Sample Streamer allows you to do is combine all of those screens into one overall view where everybody that's operating in the laboratory can see, depending on their permissions. Remember the way Compass works, not everybody can see everything. You are assigned your instruments and your stations and your privileges, and depending on those, Sample Streamer will show you what's appropriate that you should see and have overview of. So it provides all of that in one single screen, and allows you to schedule samples, that allows you to see what instruments are really busy, maybe so that you can distribute samples through to other systems in the laboratory, or maybe it helps you make the case to buy a second instrument if you can see that this instrument is always busy and always backed up with samples. That could be a cue that, yeah, having a second one of those could definitely help us and increase our revenue for our sample throughput. It can work with small laboratories with only a few instruments. In this scenario, the key is the easy user interface, where you can see everything that is going on, you can see what's running, what's happening, what's about to run, and make choices about, well, okay, I've got these extra samples, I can see that that instrument's busy, I'll move over to this other system. So all logged in users can see the sample queue, allows you to select which instrument is in use and where there's capacity to change where the sample is going to be. The scheduling becomes very easy, very transparent. You then have no backlogs on a particular instrument, causing you difficulties. Where it really comes into its own is when you use it in conjunction with a LIMS system in perhaps a larger laboratory. In the larger laboratory, so keeping track of all of the samples is a major task all on its own. You have hundreds of samples delivered every day. Each of those are logged into the LIMS system so they can be tracked and determine which tests are going to be done on them. Using Sample Streamer, instead of transferring that detail from the LIMS system to the CDS system, which is what most of us are doing just now, it's typed into LIMS, and then a bit later on you type the same information into CDS. With Sample Streamer, you create a direct connection between the LIMS system and the CDS. The LIMS system picks up the name, you determine what tests there are, and the LIMS sends that to the CDS system to actually run the samples and provide the sample lists, if you like, on the CDS. So when the LIMS ID and details have been entered, those IDs and details carry all the way through to get the report back. So you don't have any more mistakes where we entered the sample name in the LIMS system and then somebody mistyped it going into the CDS system and you then can't match them up and samples get lost. This is a real problem when you're dealing with hundreds of samples every day. That definitely, of course, sample that it will happen to will be the special one that was taken for some special reason, and that's the one that you will lose. With Sample Streamer, all of that goes away. You enter the details once in LIMS, and that ID carries all the way through the system, right the way back to the report that's imported back into LIMS and goes into the archive. So it acts as the bridge between the LIMS system and your CDS system, in our case, CompaSS. So as I mentioned, sample reception gets the samples, scans the barcode perhaps, and very many laboratories are working on barcodes these days. The LIMS programs and tests where it's going to be analysed, what tests need to be done, if multiple analysis need to be done, and issues the actual analysis commands to Sample Streamer. CompaSS then collects the data and reports that back to the LIMS system. When you report it back to the LIMS system, it can be in XML, it can be in CSV, it can be in other formats depending on what you need it to do. So it's a very flexible tool, a very configurable tool to suit many different laboratory situations. It runs in a client-server architecture. It can, of course, run in a standalone. You can install one PC and instruments, and perhaps it's a very short analysis time. Keeping track of all of those samples across all of those instruments is not straightforward. So it's very customizable, very configurable. Not only that, it does comply with 21 CFR 11 so that you can track and audit everything that went on, all the samples that were done, all the samples that failed, you have the complete story. And that is important in a CFR 11 environment. If we look a little bit to the data workflow and the workflow and how it behaves and maybe what it looks like, it can be, so each sample can be run or scheduled automatically or kept on hold, and maybe you need some additional details. I mean, the obvious answer or the obvious thing to say there is the sample comes in and it's logged into the LIMS system. The LIMS system says, right, okay, I want to run it on this instrument over here, and it sends the command to the instrument. However, the operator, before he starts the run, perhaps has to enter the internal standard weight, because that won't be available at sample reception. That will only be available in the laboratory when they are making up the standards. So you can make the run stay on hold until you enter maybe additional details that would be needed to successfully complete the run. Any runs that are scheduled, so those that are in the queue, you can decide, oh man, this one that's a bit further down, I need that to be run much more quickly. The customer is chasing me for the result. You can move it up the sample queue till it becomes the next sample. If you want, you can stop the current sample and force it to be faster, but generally speaking, moving it up to be the next sample is as much as you need to do. You can stop any run at any time, and you can make the the queue hold until you're ready to restart. Maybe if you suddenly found that your liner needed changed, or a septum needed changed, or you needed to add more solvent, or whatever the story is, you can halt the process, or you can pause the process and then pick it back up exactly where you left off. As soon as schedule runs reach the next sample, they will automatically start to run. They will start the process. So the run information is translated and entered into the instrument-specific run queue. If there is no instrument defined in the XML, again, this goes to what additional information that you need to add. So maybe you only want to add the samples and then let the user decide which instrument it's going to be run on. So you can have this kind of halfway house where the LIMS is controlling everything and determining all of the run parameters, or you can have it that the LIMS is only scheduling what samples have to be run, and you leave the actual instrument selection or additional details to the operators to actually do it. So you can have what's called a kind of mixed mode of operation, or you can run it purely manually where everything is controlled by the operator from the user screen. Once the run reaches a completed state, the critical sample streamer, so you can just double click on the data file name and it will open sample streamer as the client, and you can review the data or modify the data or recalculate the data or whatever you're going to do. The final result can then be exported in different file formats depending on what is required for the LIMS. Maybe it has a parsing mechanism where it reads the CSV file and enters those in an overall sheet for the complete sample list. Lots of different choices, lots of different customers work in different ways with these things. All of the exported files can be saved and reviewed at a later date. So you don't have any worries that, well, once I've completed this, the data file or the export is lost. No, you still save all of that data, which for a compliant laboratory becomes very important. So the LIMS provides an XML file for every sample. That's how it communicates. It determines what sample is going to be run. It sends an XML file. Sample streamer monitors for that file and extracts the information. When it is completed with that file, when that sample has been run, what it then does is it says, right, okay, what did I do with that sample? Did I actually run that sample? If it did, it puts the XML file into the backup folder. So you can always go back and check what the XML actually did. You have that detail in the audit trail anyway, but sometimes it's nice to also have the data file so that you can really review what went on. Other things that can happen, well, perhaps it didn't run that sample. Maybe there wasn't enough information. Maybe there wasn't the correct details. Maybe it was a duplicate, something like that. There could be reasons why it didn't run the sample that was directed from LIMS. In that case, it will not show up on the screen. It will show up in the audit trail as a rejected sample, and the XML file is still retained, but where we retain it in this case is in what's called the trash folder. So all things that are completed go into backup. All things that are rejected go into trash. The other couple of folders that are in here that the system uses is whether you export any details. So when you have completed the sample and it exports the run, it logs in an XML file that that was done. Okay, here's what I did with this sample. I accepted it, I scheduled it, I ran it, I exported the result. That created XML file goes into the export folder. That gives you some more flexibility at the other end. That if you use that functionality, you can then get the LIMS to read that folder and be sure that the result is valid and that all of the things that were expected to be done were actually completed. So you do have a closed loop system where the LIMS issues a command. You can then get the LIMS to read back what happened while it was out of its control, if you like, while it was in the control of sample streamer and Compass. You can read back those details and those can go in the file log or in the sample log in the LIMS system. The last one that is in here is what's called exported commands, and that's a little helpful tool that we'll talk about a little bit later on when we do the demo of Sample Streamer. It's one of the quite useful features. So the data flow between these things, as you can see, you have a completely closed loop system. The LIMS issues an XML to Sample Streamer. Sample Streamer uses SQL to keep track of everything, issues that command to Compass. Compass runs the sample, sends the details back to the LIMS. When it sees it coming back, you can look in the export folder and pull back an XML into the LIMS to see the status of any particular run that you are interested in. Basically, we can run Sample Streamer in 3 different modes, which is what I alluded to a little bit earlier. We can have it as a black box, if you like, where we don't have to have any windows open, we don't have to have Compass open, we don't have to have Sample Streamer open. We can just send commands from the LIMS system to Sample Streamer, and the runs will be done. They will be completed and the results sent back. Compass will store the data files, it will store the exported files, LIMS will get the exported files along with the metadata associated with what happened in that run. So you can have it completely invisible, just working at your PC and all of that's going on in the background. You can run it in manual mode. We talked a little bit about that at the very beginning, where you have a screen and you can enter samples manually, or you can have automated runs coming from the LIMS as well. And when you start to do that, you run in a more kind of mixed mode where your user is entering manual samples and you have your LIMS entering samples into the system as well. All of those samples, all of them will be available to be seen by the operators. So when they open the sample queue, they can see everything that is going on. They can see what's already scheduled, what's maybe come in from the LIMS, what they have manually entered. All of that detail is available on one page for the manager to overview and make sure he's getting best efficiency and throughput to his or from his laboratory. You obviously have to work with this screen, so being able to customize it to your particular needs is obviously very important as well. It's something that you do definitely need to do. So you can change the order of the columns. If I just go back a screen, you can see we have lots of different columns which are prioritized depending on what you need. Maybe you're interested in what instruments are working, maybe particular projects are more interesting, maybe you only want the sample names. You have a great deal of customization for these columns that you can move things around. Not only that, you can change what colors show up depending on what's going on. You can see in my color screen that grey is waiting, green is ended, yellows and oranges are scheduled or in progress. Maybe you want that to be different because you have different color coding depending on what samples are doing at any given instant. Again, it's a very customizable product. Another area that is very interesting from Compass's point of view is we have what's called the custom variables or the system variables, where you can define particular variables, maybe for calculations or maybe for additions of standards, or whatever it is, whatever that custom variable that you need to enter into that sample detail. We have that available in Sample Streamer so that you can enter that variable at the LIMS stage, and it will automatically be pushed through into Compass so that Compass has the correct details and then can make the calculation that you need, or whatever special use of any variable that you have. You can definitely control that from within Sample Streamer. As I mentioned before, it is 21 CFR 11 compliant. It's dependent, so all of the things that you do within Sample Streamer are related to your profile within Compass. So I'm sure we're all aware of the security profiles within Compass. You have managers and users and lab technicians and different types of operators and users of the system within Compass. Those people have particular profiles or permissions that they are allowed to use. all of that functionality is carried through into Sample Streamer so that you can monitor, you can see what they're allowed to do, what instruments they're allowed to access, what methods they're allowed to use, etc. All of that functionality is carried through into Sample Streamer. It has a built-in audit trail viewer so that you can at any point pull up the audit trail and see what has gone before. You can also export that. It is retained in the SQL database, which you can take a backup of if you need to secure the data for a longer period of time. If we take a little bit of a technical view of the system, as I mentioned, everything uses an XML input-output file schema. So if you had something specific or something new that you needed from your functionality, it could be added to this XML schema, and that could then be implemented in Sample Streamer. If you needed that customization, that's certainly something that we are interested to discuss with customers. We know that every laboratory works in a slightly different way. They have slightly different priorities from customer to customer. So Sample Streamer allows complete automation of your laboratory. This can improve efficiency, can improve throughput, and if you're a contract laboratory, could increase revenue. At the end of the day, we all have to think about the money too. You can automatically stream samples for analysis. You can send them to any instrument depending on what methods are available for it. It gives you improved utilization of instruments. That, as I mentioned, is a desirable thing. Instruments are expensive and you do need to get good value from them. You have less sample administration, no more entering multiple sample names in several different places because there is no link up between your LIMS system and your CDS system and your reporting system. All of that is taken care of within Sample Streamer. You can prioritize samples depending on what your urgency is. There is no need for Compass or Sample Streamer to be open. It can be completely background automated. If you require it, it is possible to go and intervene manually, stop samples, stop schedules, change the priority of them, whatever it is you need to do. You have that full control and flexibility. I should mention that depends on your level of user permissions. If you don't have the user permissions to do that, then I'm afraid it would not be available to you. So we do have an eye to compliance as we do all of these things. There are a few different versions of Sample Streamer. We have a workstation edition, a small business edition, medium business edition, and what's called an enterprise edition. We have several clients that are running the enterprise edition across multiple laboratories in multiple locations in different cities in one country. So it is a very expandable and very flexible tool for even the small laboratory right up to the multi-laboratory, multinational company. It can definitely be used in all of these scenarios. I'll just give you a quick look at the different part numbers that you might need. However, your local sales representative would definitely be able to help you with that. If not, please do reach out to me. I'm more than happy to assist you with anything that you might need. So that ends my presentation. I will next move on to look at the small demonstration of Sample Streamer. So you should now just my screen to move at a reasonable speed. There we are. Oh, let's do that. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So to start Sample Streamer, as you can see, it is just an icon that shows up on your desktop after installation. If I double click on it, it will open the service. So that flash screen means the service is running. And as I mentioned, the user login is very similar to Compass, where you have your user identification, what group and what projects you might be associated with. If I enter my password, Sample Streamer should start. The network's being a little bit slow this morning. Not quite sure what's going on with it. So you can see that I have a few samples that have been run before. It keeps a note of everything that has gone through with it. These, I simply need to, oh, my mouse is moving very slowly.
Sorry, John,
I
would
can
you
simply
just
click.
Can you just repeat that last section? We lost your sound.
Right, okay, yeah, everything was going a bit slowly in here, so I assume the network was being a little bit difficult. So if I need to remove any samples, you can see I've got a long list of samples that have run before. If I'm definitely finished with them, I don't have any more that I need from them in terms of this. I can just delete them just by using the delete button at the top. It asks me, are you sure? I can say yes. I'm allowed to delete multiples. I can select the first one and the last one, and it will then delete that whole section. So the usual kind of functionality that you see within Windows to add and remove and copy samples and what have you. If we initially look at how I would start a single injection from a Mac, network is moving very slowly again. Can you still hear me okay, Ashley? Am I still coming through okay?
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, we're fine. Okay, just that my mouse started moving slowly again. I thought, oh, I wonder if my audio is disappearing again. So I can select the system that I'm going to use. And I mean, this screen, as I'm sure you're aware, looks very similar to the Compass screen that you would have if you were doing a start acquisition or using a sequence. If I say OK, this will then show up in my edit window. In my edit window, I can change the run name. So this is the run name that was automatically selected from within the method. So if you have a run name determined in the method, that is automatically pulled through. However, I have the opportunity to change it. I can change the acquisition length. I can change where what detectors it's going to use, the usual things that are available. If I simply agree that, yeah, that's me, I'm all ready, if I press the apply button, it will go up into this upper section here and it will go to waiting. If I want it to just begin immediately, so yeah, I'm happy with all that information, I want it all to start, I can just say schedule immediately, and then when I press the apply button, it will, as you can see, it jumped straight to scheduled. It didn't stay in waiting. It's now submitted to the instrument and it's in progress. And what I would like to show while that's in progress, you can see I don't have Compass open anywhere. However, if I open Compass, just to let you see, so same login and the same person. Okay. And then I have a look in my systems tab. You can see that my system is busy and it is running my sample. Okay, now it's not a real instrument. It's only a peak generator just to let you see it. I don't actually have an instrument available this morning. But the key thing is I don't need Compass open to be using Sample Streamer. My results will be saved automatically and my export's done. So while that's running, if we maybe have a look at some of the other features within Compass, in the tools section, if I'm logged in as an administrator, I have a long list of things that are available to me. If I'm logged in as a non-administrator in the system, then I have a lot fewer things on this list that I can customize and change and do anything about. So the big thing in here is perhaps the config manager. So in the configuration manager, we can change the look and feel of Sample Streamer. We can set, so if we decided, well, the sample name that is inside my method is not what I want to do, I will select come on. I can select something else, and I have the usual list of things available in terms of variables to call my data file name. So I can change it when I'm using Sample Streamer against when I'm using it in a manual mode. I can change what my variables look like. So when you transfer variables from Sample Streamer to Compass, you have this list of variables available. You can edit what the variable it relates to, and you can also change what it actually displays. But sometimes the variable name or eCustom1 doesn't help you in terms of well, that variable is controlling my internal standard, or it's controlling my mass amount that I'm using for my calculation, or whatever it is. So you can use a particular variable from Compass, transfer it through here, but you can have a friendly name that makes it easy to understand what you are actually doing and what the variable is called, or what the variable does for you. If I look to the XML, so the XML status tells you about, yeah, I have connectivity to a LIMS or to some other system that's generating XML and pushing samples into Compass for me. When you're using the XML, you can see I have the CFR compliant unticked. If I tick that box, then my XML has to contain login details, and it will log who generated the code and make sure that that's attached to the audit trail. If I have it in non-compliant mode, I can predetermine who the user is that is using Sample Streamer, or I can make a Sample Streamer user if you like. It depends how you want to do it. The smart folder that's used in here is talking about where the XML goes. So this is what's called the smart folder. So any XMLs that come into this folder will automatically be scheduled, well, will be read and then scheduled if appropriate within Sample Streamer. Finally, in here you can see what your license is. So you can see that I have plenty of instruments, plenty of clients. I have LIMS enabled. I knew that because I had XML available. My installation type is standalone because I'm only running on my local PC, and I've got plenty of time left on my license. So some of the configuration that's available, if we go along the top line, one of the things I mentioned was I can see any run that has completed. So if I wanted to see my last run, I can just click the Compass button. It will still ask me to log in because the logged in user for Sample Streamer could be different from the logged in user for Compass. It may be somebody else that's reviewing it. So if I just log in again, it will open that data file and show me my results. There you go, directly from Sample Streamer. Finally, you can print preview, you can print, you have the usual things. If I wanted to use it in a LIMS mode, just to let you see that operating, I've created a few XML files that I can drop in the correct folder to let you see these showing up in Sample Streamer. So if I just copy these, and I'll just move this off to the side so that when I put them in, because it does happen quite quickly. One of the things about computers we all know is they do things fast. So as soon as I paste these in here, you can see it is automatically scheduling my runs. Because all of them have been scheduled, if I go look in my backup folder, which is something I mentioned earlier, they will all show up in here. If I choose the ones at the top, there you go, you can see that they all appeared, and some of them I've run before and it's automatically renamed the XML.